Hi there, you're listening to the Kingdom Sexuality Podcast. We're Alana, Kyle, and Tira, friends who have a heart for intimacy and long to uncover God's truth and design for sexual freedom within marriage. If you enjoy listening to our episodes or like our content over on Instagram, would you consider leaving a review or subscribing? It really helps. Welcome here. We're back for another episode of the Kingdom Sexuality Podcast. I'm Alana. I'm joined by my co-host, Kyle and Tira. I'm pointing at them, but you can't see them. You can hear them. Special welcome to the patrons who are here. If you want to be a patron and just get like the behind the scenes information on what's going on with us, we just share that kind of information. We get like their input on things. They get to choose episodes, things like that. It's really great. Or if you just want to support us and the show, you can go to patreon.com/kingdomsexuality to do that. And the verse for today is Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever, which is Hebrews 13:8. It's a solid verse. It's good. So this episode is a Q&A, as you already know. So essentially, I put out a questions box on Instagram. You guys put your questions, and now we're going to answer them. So let's just get right into it. Yeah. Okay. Question number 1. How do you balance one partner wanting sex more than the other?
I know what Kyle would say. Need to schedule
What would Kyle
it.
say?
Scheduling sex is a great idea.
Yeah. But what if the partner's like, it's scheduled, but I still don't want it?
Well, that's a whole different issue. If one partner doesn't want it at all, that's a
wanting
drive
sex
thing.
more than the other.
I mean, I feel like this is where you have to get into the background of like it just produces a little bit more question. Like, okay, well, why isn't the other one wanting it more? Is it the stage of life that they're in? Is it that the one doesn't enjoy it very much? Does one have a higher mental load that doesn't feel like they're being shared? Or how is their emotional intimacy? And
is there pleasure?
Yeah.
But also, I think there's an aspect of this where, do you have responsive desire? Like, is it worth just getting things going? Because then that's when all that will ramp up. Typically it's the woman, statistically, who has the lower drive, and the husband is the higher drive, and the woman is more likely to have a responsive desire, which, if you don't know what that means, it means that you respond to stimulus. Your arousal is responsive, meaning once things get going, your arousal gets going. You don't get aroused without things getting going. Like maybe visuals don't get you going. Yeah, it's not as spontaneous. So sometimes you got to just start, and then things will get going.
And even just knowing that your body, like thinking it ahead of time, going, okay, I know this is how my body works. I know once we start, I'm going to get there. And so I'm going to choose to be there and want it. And I know that my body's going to respond to that. It helps with your mindset change too.
Yeah. And I think it's good for this person to ask themselves, what would it look like for me to want sex more? Like, what is it specifically that I don't like? Is it that I don't have pleasure? Is it that I don't like giving of myself in this way? Is it that I'm uncomfortable with the things we're doing? Like what specifically is it that you feel is holding you back from wanting it more? Mm-hmm. And maybe that takes counseling. Maybe you don't know the answer to that, right? And this is where counseling and sex therapy is awesome, because they'll help you get down to the root of that and then provide strategies and solutions to overcome it.
Yeah, we can link my counselor online in the show notes. They specialize in like sex therapy specifically, which is amazing.
For Christians,
from a Christian perspective, which like incredible. So yeah. So I think questions here is the key. Asking questions. If you're the spouse who's like, I want it more than my spouse does, and you're like, sharing, why don't you want it more? It's like, well, why don't they want it more, right? Like for them, it's like, well, that doesn't answer my question. So maybe it requires you to have some conversations and just ask them questions and be like, okay, an ideal sexual experience to you, what does that look like? Like, what are we doing?
Sometimes it's also a mindset shift, right? A mindset shift of, like Tira's talked about this before, where sex again, to like, no, like I'm going to look forward to this. Or maybe thinking, you know what, I'm like, I'm in a good spot. Like my husband wants me or my wife wants me. Lots of spouses don't want their spouses, and that's a whole nother issue. So change your perspective of this from, oh, he just wants sex again to, man, my husband wants me. Like that's amazing.
Yeah. Changing it from this is something that I have to give. Change it around to, oh, this is something that I get to receive.
Ultimately, though, this is going to come down to compromise. Compromise is the answer to this question, and it always will be. And then some level of like selflessness. Like someone's going to have to be more selfless than the other person in this scenario.
I was also going to say too, another thing too, like when you're asking questions, to be curious, like have it as that atmosphere, environment, not a like, hey, I want you to change. Can you tell me why you're not like how I want you to be?
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
right,
like,
right.
hey, let's figure this out together. We're a team. What, like, I'm really curious about what you think and how you feel. And I want to know you better, coming at it at that, from that angle instead.
Yeah. Love that.
How do you be intimate with a partner who refuses sex? You don't.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to
No
force
means
yourself
no.
on someone who doesn't want it. Exactly. You go to counseling.
Yeah.
Like, I know that sounds like a cop-out answer from our perspective, but like sometimes that is the answer, right? Because we don't have all of the context. We don't have time to receive all the context and then provide advice. Like, the answer is go to counseling, talk to a professional who can help you guys sort this out.
Yeah. Especially since you used the word refuses. Like that's not just how to be intimate with a partner who doesn't want sex. It's refuses. So there's definitely more to it than just not wanting. Like it's on purpose refusing you. So yeah, definitely counseling. Okay. Wife with low sex drive and husband with high sex drive who both just want to be better for each other. That's great.
Yeah. You're way ahead of lots of people.
Couples.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just compromising, conversations.
Is there really even a question here? Like, just keep being selfless and you guys are going to do great.
Yeah. Like, I don't think there's a do this and you'll be a match drive, because 90% of the rest of everybody is also not the same drive. So the fact that you already both want to do better for each other is awesome. So
Yeah,
I think
and
just one.
I mean, my question here would be like, what does better mean? Like, is better just different stuff?
Right.
Is it like better at pleasuring your partner? Like, what does better mean here?
Hmm.
But
Right.
I mean, ultimately, I don't see a problem here. That's why that's just hard to answer.
Yeah, and keep with that mindset of team and have fun with it. Like find more ways to experiment and change things up. You know, like being a part of our United Ignite group where club where we give you daily challenges to do, and they each have some sort of spice it up option. So it's not necessarily having sex every night, but it's definitely something more intimate than just like, hey, write a little love note for your spouse today. They go deeper than that and make you think more about sex, which can help so much sometimes. You know, like when you're dating and you feel like you can't, like you can hardly wait to have sex, you're aroused and it's already, and you're like, and then you get married and all of a sudden that arousal doesn't seem to be there. It's because you thought about it all the time when you were dating because it wasn't something you were allowed to do. So if you, like, I'm going to use United Ignite because it's such a good example. If you're getting that email every day and even just reading what the challenge is, maybe you don't even do it, excuse me, but just the thought that you're thinking of your spouse in a sexual way every day will already start getting those desires going. It's reminding you of your first love, right? It's bringing up that desire. So doing stuff like that where you're like, okay, I want to be intentional. I want to be thinking of my spouse. And again, not just full sex, but in an intimate sexual type way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also say, actually, this is where like one of our sex challenges could come into play, because it's one of those things where you commit to doing something for X amount of days straight. And maybe that can help the low drive spouse really figure out what they like, or they can see, you know what, maybe I'm not actually low drive. I just like wasn't enjoying what we were doing. But like this new thing that we just tried that was in the challenge was great. Or I love this position now, or whatever it was. Like if you commit to something for X amount of days in a row, I think you will see huge benefits and huge like perspective shift and mentality shift towards how you actually view sex.
Yeah. And because I work with women's health, I always like to point out our menstrual cycles and where we are in the month. So, figure out where you are in your cycle. And as you're about to ovulate, that's going to be the best time to feel good. So even if you know that, like, okay, from period till ovulation, that's our better time, let's have lots of fun and do experimenting and more things in that 2 weeks. And then after ovulation, until you're waiting till your period, that's the time where maybe you don't have it as much, because that's probably the time the wife isn't going to enjoy it as much. And it's going to feel like, oh man, this is it again.
Right.
Like use your cycle to your advantage of when things are going to be really fun, and then take a little bit of a break more during those other 2 weeks where you can maybe not have it as much, or intimacy looks different during that time.
So doing better or being better for each other in that time could just look like having those conversations and being like, hey, this is what my cycle is doing right now. This is when things kind of peak for me. This is when things kind of dry up for me. Like just laying it all out there to just fully, because I love the attitude though. It's like we both want to be better for each other. It's like, oh, good. All right, next one. How to deal with having no drive, nursing and pregnant. So tired. Yeah.
Yep, we've been there.
Yeah.
Well, be encouraged. You're not going to be there forever. It does come back. But yeah, this is a hard season.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A time when sex will just not be on your brain. It just won't. I mean, unless you're the kind of person who has it on your brain. This person doesn't sound like they are. But I would just highly encourage you to still have times of like closeness and connection when you can. And maybe that's like saying to your husband, hey, this is not on my brain. And just like being totally upfront about it and being like, I have no desire for sex right now, but I still want to feel close to you. I still want to be intimate with you. Can you just maybe be the one to initiate or suggest other things we could be doing? Like, let me know when you're having a shower so I can come in and we can just be together. If I'm going to bed early, can you just come to bed too? And so we can just lay in bed together. Whether that's with clothes on, clothes off, whatever it is, but just making space for opportunity for some kind of intimate time together, I think would be really good.
I think too, you can always put reminders in your phone or wherever you look at the calendar or whatever, just so that it like, however often that you want to be close and you want to be there for your husband, and it feels okay for you. Put it in your phone to be like, hey, it's been 2 weeks. Or, whatever your length of time that you want, to just remind yourself like, hey, no, we're still a team. Like we need to do something sexually fun tonight that, you may need to compromise a bit. Not saying that if you're uncomfortable and it's painful or anything, like don't force yourself. But yeah, you can, when you have it scheduled and ahead of time, like, okay, yeah, I can probably get some extra rest on this night, or even let him on the schedule and be like, babe, I'd like to spend time with you tomorrow. Can you take the night shift tonight? Or, or have a babysitter come over so that you can sleep a little bit longer that day. Just little things that you can work ahead of time for a date because you want to initiate with your husband.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Get naked and ask for a massage.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a win-win for both.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, don't worry. It'll end. That season comes to an end and you'll be back. So be encouraged. You're not going to be there forever.
Yeah. We have a number of episodes on sex and pregnancy and postpartum and all those things. So I can link a bunch of them in the show notes if that's helpful for people in this season to go back to listen to. That way we don't have to just talk about it all right now because we have entire episodes on this. So I feel like it'd be useful for you to go and listen to those if that's the season you're in.
All right, let's talk about oral sex. Why is swallowing such a turn on for guys? Is it still a good BJ if I don't swallow? Yes. Any guy who turns down a blowjob because his wife won't swallow is like uber selfish. Like that's absolutely ridiculous. I'm sorry, but you're way too selfish if that's your viewpoint.
I feel like we have our hook for our episode, by the way.
So yes, it's still a good blowjob if you don't swallow. Why is it such a turn on for guys? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think there is this like I think there is still this, I don't want to say like it's a porn thing, but there is almost this mentality of like she's serving me in that way. Like I think there's a healthy way to look at it where it's like, wow, she's serving me in this way, which is probably not like the most enjoyable for most women. But then there's like the perverted side of that where it's like, yeah, you serve me in that way. And I think I think we should distinguish here between like swallowing and finishing in her mouth. Because I think you can finish in her mouth without swallowing. And because some guys will say that the sensation is different of finishing in her mouth versus finishing on her or in a towel or whatever, however else you're finishing. And there is that distinction. But having her swallow doesn't actually change any of the sensation. I mean, it shouldn't, because that's her doing. She's not doing anything to you when she swallows. So
yeah.
I think a lot of it. What's that?
Thanks for clarifying that. I wouldn't have even thought of that. Like, oh yeah.
Of what?
Well, just like
if there was a different sensation or not.
No, but even if, like, yes, you're getting it in your mouth, and yeah, you swallowing doesn't affect him in any way. Like, is he getting more
you're
suction?
Probably swallowing you're probably swallowing and he's not in your mouth anymore.
Yeah. Right, I guess.
I mean, I guess you could swallow with it still in your mouth, but like that's going to be more difficult. Like, drink some water right now, open your mouth and try to swallow. It's a lot harder to do than closing your mouth and swallowing like a normal thing, right?
Yeah, can you swallow with your mouth open?
You can, right? Like people who chug beer and stuff, like that's how they do it.
Yeah, that's true.
But like, I don't have any water left. I finished it all. But if I were to drink my water and like put it in my mouth, open my mouth, and try to swallow,
yeah,
it's not easy.
I guess even.
No, it's not easy.
Oh, I wish this was more of a video podcast, because this would be perfect. The girls are trying to do it right now
with their water bottles. Yeah.
Anyways, I think a lot of the turn on is rooted in
kind of like domination almost.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
And that's not to say like don't hear what we're not saying. We're not saying that it's a bad thing for women for you to swallow, for guys for you to want your wife to swallow. Not at all. It's just check your views and your mentality and where that's rooted. And ladies, if you love swallowing and he loves it, like by all means. Yeah. There was a post today in the Facebook group about a wife who swallowed for the first time, and her husband was like so ecstatic. She was so ecstatic because they reached this milestone together, and they like celebrated it. Like amazing. Like, keep doing that. Like that's a huge win for you guys. So it's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
Unless it's like an ego thing.
Exactly. It's not a bad thing, but it can be.
Okay, wait, you totally just cut out. What did you say?
Yeah, say it again, Kyle.
I cut out?
Yeah.
Oh, I said it's not a bad thing, but it can be, depending on what kind of mentality you're coming into it with.
Okay. Do women often climax during oral? I think it's a common thing.
Yeah, if you climax during regular sex, you should be able to climax during oral. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. It's like, well, it depends on the woman, depends how good your skills are, depends on
how practiced you are. If you don't ever do oral, like then probably wouldn't really
take some time.
Know how to like.
Let's take this perspective from the woman who is saying that she doesn't climax during oral.
I would say, I mean, I think it's okay. Like is the question asking like, am I not normal because I can't climax during oral?
Right.
Then maybe. I would say like, no, you're not abnormal.
You're not abnormal, but it is achievable.
Yeah. Yeah.
No? Yes?
Well, I'm thinking like, because oral is clitoral stimulation. So you'd have, as long as you have access to
as long as you're doing clitoral stimulation. Yeah. Maybe the person that's not the kind of oral sex they're having. And so then, no, you probably wouldn't be having an orgasm.
But yes, I think it should be achievable. Yeah.
And if it's not, and if you haven't, buy your husband the book She Comes First and get him to read it over and over and over until he gets good at it, and let him practice. And I promise you, it'll get better.
Yeah.
There you go. Kyle promises.
It's the Kylan's guarantee. I'll refund your book cost if it doesn't work.
Well, there you go.
There's another episode where you say you'll pay for people to get alarm clock or alarm clocks.
Oh yeah, I'll buy your alarm clock. Yeah, get your phone out of your bedrooms, ruining your sex life.
Yep. I feel like you guaranteed something else, another episode too.
Keep a running tally. The Kylan's guarantees.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, is there any insight into oral sex and swallowing? What are ways to approach it in a healthy way? I think we talked about this.
I think we did, yeah.
Yeah. And this is a man asking this question.
Okay, yeah.
To clarify.
I mean, questions are the least threatening way to bring up something new. So, hey, babe, have you ever thought about swallowing? I mean, you got to say it at some point. There's no like gentle way to say the word swallowing.
Mm-hmm. It's
healthy
so
ways
this
to approach
person,
it is. Sorry, go ahead.
This person actually expanded in a DM. And so so this guy said, on the Facebook group, there have been some questions regarding oral sex and swallowing. So if you're not in the Facebook group, maybe go check that out so you can be involved in these conversations.
Lots of swallowing.
Yeah. Side note aside. Okay. You may have covered this in one of the podcasts, but is there any insight as to products or techniques and or ways of approaching it openly to a spouse who maybe is scared to try it? So just to expand on our conversation potentially.
That helps. So products and techniques, products can range from whatever you want. Like from the woman's perspective, I'm guessing you want a product to make it taste less gross. And you can use anything from whipped cream to chocolate sauce to peanut butter to whatever it is that you want. Like just use anything.
As long as he's not allergic.
Some people love peanut butter.
I just
not
totally
me, but some people. I'm just trying to think of sweet things that people like putting in their mouth. Or if you want an actual product that's made for this, go to marrieddance.com, type in the word oralicious, so oral with issues at the end, and they make this product, which is like I don't know what you'd call it. It's kind of like a paste, I guess, or like a cream. But anyways, you put it in your mouth and they've got tons of different flavors. They got like pina colada and strawberry and cotton candy and chocolate and all these different things.
I think the point is to coat your mouth so you have the flavor of
something
vanilla
good.
Strawberries versus penis.
It coats your mouth so that it like stays in there during the process. Like you put it in.
Yeah, like, you put it in either before or like if he gives you enough warning, you throw a quick shot in there before he finishes.
Covenant Spice also has something like that, a product like this as well.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
And then in terms of technique, I mean, the female version of She Comes First is called Passionista, and it's all about how to give your husband amazing oral sex. So you can check that out. That's got all the technique you could ever want.
Yep. I need to finish that book. I'm still not done. I'm working on it.
Finish the book on finishing.
Does it talk about swallowing in there?
Not yet. Have you? I thought you read it.
I did too.
I have it on like my Kindle on my phone, and I just never open it. So I've read like the first couple pages.
Okay. I got my chunk into it. It's decent. Like it was fine. It's a good book. It's an easy read. But I just need to finish it. So I hope we covered your question. If you send a question in, if not, tune in next week where we will potentially answer it then. So I will close in prayer. Dear Lord Jesus, thank you so much that you are just so good to us. And I just ask that you would bless everyone listening today. And bless their marriage and their sex life. And if there's stuff that they're working on and they're struggling through, would you just give them so much clarity and good conversation as they navigate these tough topics? And so we just thank you for what you're doing in our lives. Amen.
Amen.
Hi there, you're listening to the Kingdom Sexuality Podcast. We're Alana, Kyle, and Tira, friends who have a heart for intimacy and long to uncover God's truth and design for sexual freedom within marriage. If you enjoy listening to our episodes or like our content over on Instagram, would you consider leaving a review or subscribing? It really helps. Welcome here.